Hello everyone, I hope you had a great weekend. I'm finally here to record another video, and today I wanted to talk about mixing. I will try to make this video as brief as possible because this is a very deep topic. What I will try to do is talk about a good starting point for mixing, some small advice on how to set up your session before you start to mix in order to get it balanced. Here I have a project from a loop that I made with Dorisburg, Alex. Yeah, I figured we would mix it together. And so what is mixing? Mixing is basically getting the levels the way you want of your track. A lot of us do this on the fly while we are producing. There is definitely a value, however, to separate production, mixing, just the way that it's a good idea to separate mixing and mastering. What's the difference between mixing and mastering? I think a clear difference is how do you say, like the strength of the adjustments that you make. In mixing you can EQ plus 20 dB and really pull the levels up and down here and there until you think it sounds perfect. Basically, that's what you're aiming for. You want it to sound the way you want. And mastering basically is committing to the mix, but listening with fresh ears to get that final touch right. Usually it's good to let someone else do that, just to get someone else's ears on it. But it's of course possible to do it yourself also, and I have a very good advice for you when it comes to that, and also in terms of mixing and judging your productions, and that is to listen to the track with someone else in the room. For instance, let's say you have a spouse, partner in your apartment, or a friend. So when you have done your mix, you take your EP and you ask them to sit with you and listen. And then you might at least notice how you think that, oh shit, this hi-hat sounds, it's so sharp in the mix, fuck, I'm embarrassed, oh sorry, but you don't, you focus on it, and you're being attentive to these details, because this is bringing in a new mindset to, you're sitting in your studio when you're doing the mix and everything sounds great, but when you are with someone else you get very self-aware, and that's a good thing if you use it correctly, because it's not about judging yourself or being hard. It's just that having how do you say, a shift of mindset is it's a blessing. So use it as just a tool to make notes, and just have a look at that later. That's a very strong tip for me. When you have an EP or whatever, you think it's great, listen to it with someone else, and be attentive to your own reactions in company. So, how do we start? What I do, something I've done for many years, is that the first thing I do, this also comes to when I'm producing. I mean, in my template project, I put the master on plus 6 dB. The reason for this is because then we can aim at 0 here for the mix. And when we are done, with the mix, we just put it to 0, and when we make the export, we automatically have a 6 dB headroom for the mastering engineer to use for his effects and techniques that he will need to get the master balanced. So yeah, actually I don't think I will show you the track before because this is kind of mixed while I was producing. I had in mind to share it with you before, but let's not. You know, I've been trying to plan these videos before, but it only makes me more confused, so let's just do whatever happens, right? And there are some different ways to start a mix. It depends on the genre. For instance, I mean, the kick drum is one of the most common, I think, especially when it comes to electronic music. And but the rule, I would say, is that you start with the most important part. I mean, there are other ways. For instance, let's say it's a pop song. Maybe you start with the vocal. You put the vocal up, and then you build a mix around the vocal, because that's the most important part. With electronic music and techno, the kick drum is one of the most important part. So we build a mix around the kick drum. So let's see here. Kick is here. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. Let's see, why the hell is it silent? Oh yeah, I put this one. Yep. So what we can do is we pull it up to until it shows -10. And here +6. And why -10? Decibels. Okay, I will not go into details. I will split. I mean, we will talk about compression, equalization, delay, reverbs, and all these kind of things in separate videos. For this video, we will just try to focus on how to start a mix and how to build it. So we start at -10, which leaves us, here you see on the master, we leave roughly 4 decibels to fit all the other elements. Okay, and a good rule to know, for instance, if we duplicate this, play them together. Whoops. Oh, it's not playing. That's why. See, it gains 6 dB. So 6 dB is double. So we have this room to play around with, and we will add the next part, which are some kind of bass sounds. Yeah, so we have the kick and the bass. Let's see here. I'll put this. This is a reference track. It says AB here. For those of you who don't know AB mixing, it's basically A is our track, B is another track. It's a good way to you pick a track which you think is relevant for the track that you are making in terms of timbre, sound, and you compare it to this one. Here I've chosen a track by Alex, since I'm working with him. And this is a mastered track. It's a WAV file. It's good to use the WAV file just to so you know that you're mixing against a proper file. I've lowered it to minus 12 dB to have a target volume that's appropriate for the mixing. Let's listen. You can hear the kick, basically the same. Yep. So then we just start pulling other elements up. And before we do that, I will talk a bit about mono. It's a very good custom to build your mix in mono. There are reasons for this, obviously. One of them is that a lot of music playback today is in mono. Some listen on mono laptop speakers, some listen on mono Bluetooth speakers, cell phone speakers, and also if you have a mix that sounds good in mono, it's usually a strong mix, and it makes sure that you have a good starting point before you start using stereo creatively, because it also nurtured this idea about stereo, that it's a spice. It's not the foundation, you could say, of the whole music. You should use it, or you can use it however you want, but it's a tool to use with thought. So we put it here in mono, and then we will try to introduce some other sound. And a common way to do it is to introduce it by levels of importance. For instance, I talked a bit about before pop music or whatever. There are 3 common things. It's like the kick, the snare, and the vocal. So it's a common way to build a mix. You start with the kick, and then you put the snare to sound in good level with the kick, and then you put the vocal so it sits well with the kick and the snare in mono, and then you build the rest of the band or the experience environment around this. In this track, it's not really easy to pick which element is the most important, but I will start with these ones, which I think is a more synth kind. For techno, then let's say you start with the kick, bass, you put in the lead synth, and then you put the hi-hats on top of it, pull up the atmospheres until you have a balanced mix. But we will start here, and let's see what happens. Sounds about right. Let's see what this is. You can solo. Important thing with solo, it's a very good tool to localize, locate a sound. So for instance, I pull this up. I'm having a bit of a hard time separating like what's this sound and not. I can just solo just to hear it, and then I can toggle back to the mix, and I know where it is, what I'm looking for. I can hear that it's kind of coming in and out of this sound. You can't hear it always, but then this one goes down a bit and this one goes up, so it's kind of floating in between, adding, not adding, kind of adding. A bit of hats. You can shift between the other track. You can hear this one is a bit, but don't stare yourself blind on the reference, because it's not the same track, it's not the track you're doing, but it can be a good reference. I mean, for instance, now I heard that this was a bit louder than this, and then I started listening to this sound with new ears, like, okay, this is sounding different. Do I want it to sound different? No, I don't want it to sound like that, so I pull it down a bit. And you can compare the hi-hats. You hear it sounds more in the center. And our hi-hats are more in the background. And again, it's a different kind of hi-hat. Do we want it to punch the way this hi-hat is? Or do we want it to just add a bit of in the background? I think this sounds good. What's this? A good way can be to close your eyes. You choose the level, and then you play and you close your eyes and you move it up and down until you don't know where you are, and then you start to adjust it until you think it sounds good with your eyes closed. See there, I muted this one just to see it, because this is kind of masking this one, and I just want to hear what is affecting what. You can toggle between them, but an important thing is that you don't mix in solo, because then it's not mixing. Mixing is about mixing levels, so you need references. You don't sit like this. Oh yeah, now I get the right feeling, and then because then you're not putting it in the mix. You're just with this track, and that's not correct. And that's like one of the few rules that's like you don't debate. You always put the levels in the mix. It's very important that you have your AB track at the same volume, because if you have it louder, it will sound like it's more powerful, and you will have a lot of psychoacoustic by-effects that you try to compensate. For instance, this one, as you can see here, it's at -7, while our track this is 5 decibels lower, but it's mastered. It has exciters, it has limiting compressors on the master, and this kind of thing to make it sound louder. So for instance, if we put this on the same volume on our project, we compare it to our, it doesn't give a fair picture. So it's important to find the right starting level of your track. There are tools to do this, like Ozone, but I'm working without that now, so that you can all do this without any extra tools. Some nature from the forest where I used to live. There, now we have a good sounding mix in mono. I think it's decent. I mean, I'm sitting here with headphones and we're doing a video, and the point is not for me to make the most mind-blowing mix. The point is for you to see the principle and how to approach it. And in short, it's a good way to pull up your master to +6, put your kick at -10 dB, and then you work bum 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 bum, and you put all the levels and you get a feel of it. That's the beginning. Then we can shut off the mono and you will see the difference. You see there? It just opened up, and it was like we managed to get it done with simple tools before, and now we can just release to the beauty of digital producing, where we can just have whatever we want, you know. With analog, that's just to put a channel in stereo can cost you a lot of money sometimes, especially in Eurorack, but now we can just do whatever we want, and that's also a common trap, because people put everything in stereo, all the delays are flying everywhere, and the reverbs are so big, everything is so lush because it's free and we can do it how much we want, you know. It's good to take a step back and make it rough from the beginning, simple, and then we add with some elegance. We will listen again to the difference. And we will compare it to this one. And you can hear also, it's more stereo, and we will try this also in mono. You hear the reverb on the perk kind of disappears. So what else? For instance, I noticed this one. Preferably, for here we will listen to this, and we will put a spectrum. Let's see. No, not this one. Yeah, here. You see, 100 in here. It has bass stuff, and it's panned, and we want the bass in mono, for instance. Here we can listen to the bass. We put it in mono. It's important to have the bass in mono because you can have phase cancellations, which means that when you submit to mono later, you can have it basically disappears, and then maybe your bass line just disappears after mastering, and then you have to fix it. So it's much better to check it now, and always keep your bass in mono unless you really have a strong like statement to make with your stereo bass, and then it can absolutely work. But it can also have a lot of problems. But yeah, we put it in mono here. And then when we have a mix that we're happy with, we can introduce some effects. And here are the settings that I put before on the original. I will just turn them on and see what happens. Without. Some parallel compression to add some bass. I showed this in a previous video. Add some room to that. I'm just showing you here the solo track with and without the effects, so that you know what I have done. Again, when you're mixing, you don't put the effects in stereo. You pull them down, and then you listen, and you introduce. Delay, reverb. Next one. You can hear how it becomes drier. This one. Now you can hear how it gets more lush. And what I want with that is to make it sit in the environment in which I built the track. my send and return tracks are basically building the environment. I have 3 reverbs, I have 2 delays, and I mean, this is an old project, I don't know exactly. There's another reverb for some reason with that I have panned hard right. I think I know why I've done that. Let's see, it's the F. Okay, I'm not really using that. This is a cool effect. I won't go into it. Whatever. Yeah. So just have a listen. So now this sound, it's very dry. Sounds unnatural because it doesn't. I mean, we are playing this track, let's say, in an open field or in a cave or something, and then there's a sound in the middle that's just sound dry, and it can sound very unnatural. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. Most often I don't. So let's listen with the reverbs. Puts it in the environment. Adding some reverbs. That's the basics. And I talked a bit about making it sound real. This is a good guideline for when you're making music. Making mixes, creating environments is to make it sound real, make it easier for people to accept what they are hearing, and then you can play with it by making weird stuff that sound a bit out of place, but that the listener still feels comfortable and secure and safe in the experience, safe enough to feel comfortable with that weird little thing lurking around. If you make it all over the place, people will be for our little monkey brain, it might be a bit too much. But I think that's about it for this video. In other videos, I will talk about, like I said, compression and EQing and all these kind of things, and really zoom in on the separate concepts and how to use it and when, so that you can make mindful decisions. But the core point, and which I could have told you in 1 minute, is to put your master up, put all your levels down on your entire mix, pull the master up to +6, put your kick to -10 dB, 10 dBFS, not 10 dB here, but on the read. So it's peaking on -10, 9, 8 somewhere. And then you introduce, by order of importance, the elements. The kick, some bass, get it sounding right, get the lead up or the hi-hats to sit well, and then you start building your mix. That's the key. And check your mix in mono so it sounds good. We will do that now, because now we added a lot of reverb. You can hear some reverb in the middle. You see this? Changes a lot. But it's still, I think it's still there, present enough to make a contribution to the emotion of the track. Maybe disappear. interferes a bit too much actually. Yeah, and that's it. I will try to do more videos on mixing down the line. Now I hope you got some inspiration on how to get your mixes sounding balanced, and how to make this is called gain staging, to get that right. And then of course, I mean, getting your kick sounding right, getting the bass sounding right, getting the kick sound good with the bass, and all these EQing rules, that it's a very big topic, and it's beyond the scope of this video, and I will make more videos on that in the coming months or weeks or whatever. But this is a good start, and also in the process of pulling the kick up, pulling the bass up, you will notice when sound is sounding weird, and you need to figure out why. And then I will do my best to make videos to teach you how to deal with the specific issues. And if you're doing this and you are wondering why isn't it working, and this element is never working for me, just write me a message. I will make a note of it, and we will make a video and to try to overcome this issue. Thank you for watching today, and all the Patreon people watching this, thank you for supporting me and allowing me to share some ideas like this. Have a great evening or whatever.